This time I thought we'd have a conversation about data, Microsoft 365 data, and specifically yours and mine. So in terms of deletion, retention, and this thing called legal hold. What does it all mean anyway? Well, if you want to learn, you've come to the right place. Greetings my fellow YouTubers, welcome back to the channel. I really appreciate you stopping by, and especially if this is your first visit, we really do appreciate you coming to see us. If you enjoy the video, of course, hit the like button. It really does help my channel, and we're really getting close to that 10k number. So if you've not subscribed, hit that subscribe button and you won't miss out on the good stuff in the future. Please excuse my surroundings. Obviously I'm not in my studio this week. I'm on site in Trondheim in Norway delivering a course, but I wanted to talk to you today about data, your data, my data. How does Microsoft 365 actually deal with it? What happens to your data when you send it to a Microsoft data center? Well, essentially we have three things that can happen. One is it's deleted. Number two is it's retained for a certain amount of time. So for example, for compliance reasons, you may want to put a retention policy on it. And the third option, of course, is that you can place the content on legal hold. And we do this for a number of reasons. It might be for operational reasons. You just want to keep a permanent copy of the data, or it could be for as part of a litigation in a legal challenge or something like that. So I've got some interesting demos to talk about. Now, I'm specifically answering a number of questions this week, and the first one was on deletion. And somebody asked me, Andy, if I obviously no longer have my Microsoft 365 account, what will happen to my data? Well, my friend, I got to tell you that you know, if it's a subscription service, that's the first thing. Yes, you understand that. So as long as you continue to pay your subscription, it's not like one of those free services where your data will just sit forever. So typically, three things you got to remember: 30, 60, 93. Okay, they're your three numbers. So essentially, if you stop paying your subscription, 30 days goes in. On day number 31, this will then send your data into reduced functionality mode, okay? And likewise, if you delete any content, it will go into what we call a first stage recycle bin. Now, beyond that, it then goes into a second stage recycle bin for a further 63 days. And on day number 93, it's gone forever. So that's the end of your data. Now, if you don't pay your subscription, and I'd like to point out, by the way, it does happen. People decide, you know, they want to come out of Microsoft 365. So can I still get access to your data? The answer is yes, you can. So you can still access your data, but in that reduced functionality mode means that you can read it, you can copy it, you can back it up, but you can't use it operationally. That's essentially what it means. So I think today's demo, what I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you how the recycle bins work. I'm also going to show you a couple of things in SharePoint, and we're going to talk about data retention, and also I'll talk about this thing called legal hold as well. So stick with us. I got some cool demos coming up. So are you ready? Let's take a look. So the first place I'm going to come is here in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Now, looking at your home page here in 365, you've got documents, whether you're working online with them or whether you keep them at home, whether you store them on your OneDrive for business, or indeed if you have them in any kind of team or a group, which of course uses SharePoint document libraries. So in essence, your data actually lives in SharePoint. Now, in addition to that, of course, all your email, your chat messages, everything like that lives in Exchange Online. So if I come into the SharePoint Admin Center, the first thing that you need to know is essentially one of two things is going to happen to your data. Either it's deleted or it's archived. That's it. it's deleted or archived. On the subject of archiving, really, if you place something on legal hold, it's a permanent archive until you release it. All right. So first up, what I want to do is I'm going to come into SharePoint here. I'm going to come into active sites and just scroll right down to the bottom. And here's a site that I just created not that long ago. I'm in Trondheim this week. So here is a Trondheim team. You can see it's also a Microsoft team as well. And if I go into this, you can see that in here, if I open up my website, and here in my website, you'll notice that I have a recycle bin. So any content, anything that I've deleted within the site or within the document library or as part of the Microsoft group, any data will slip into this recycle bin. And it'll go in here for 30 days. Now, as I've said, beyond that 30 days, what's happening is, and if you look right down at the bottom here, see can't find what you're looking for, check out the second stage recycle bin. Now, if you're working on your website and you don't see it, just scroll down a little bit further because it's quite sneaky and sometimes it's really hard to see. So we click into the second stage recycle bin, and this is where your data will be stored for a further 63 days. So for a total of 93 days, your data is stored in here. Now, beyond that, on the 93rd 01, boom, it's deleted. Okay, once it's deleted, there is no way, not even Microsoft could get your data back. All right, so that's the first thing. That's how deletion works. So 30, again, 93 days. Now, if you're trialing Microsoft 365, so you do a trial, which is, we all do that. When you create the trial, you can get 30 days of free use. Now, beyond that 30 days, if you want to extend your trial, you can then extend it to 60 days, but that involves you need to put in a credit card number for that. Now, you're not charged for that. It's just used for identity, by the way. Now, if you decide that you don't wish to keep your data beyond that time period, what happens is your account then goes into reduced functionality mode. In other words, read-only. Your data is all here. You can still access it. You can go in. Data continues to flow as normal, but you can't edit it and you can't delete it. But you can archive it and you can copy it and you can restore and you can back it up. That's the important thing. Again, 93 days, the whole tenant is then deleted. So that's how that works. Okay. So with that said, what's the next thing that we need to think about? Well, the next thing then is on the subject of compliance. For compliance reasons, you may need, depending on the industry that you're in, you may need or indeed are required to keep copies of your data. And in this case, I'm heading into the newly named Microsoft Purview Admin Center, which of course is now or was the Compliance Admin Center. And again, Microsoft love renaming old products. So rather than just having data retention policies or DRP, and now what we have is I'm just scrolling down a little bit further and we have a number of new tools, and we have something called data lifecycle management. And it's in here that you can create retention policies. In fact, everything to do with retention and deletion and archiving, essentially you can find in here. So this is where we can create our retention policies. You can also have sensitivity labels and label policies here. You can create what we call adaptive scopes. I'll come back to that in a second. And you've also got importing. So this is where you can import content into 365. And you can do this in one of two ways. You can either import it manually, like Connect. And the other thing that you can do is you can also use the import service with Microsoft, where you can actually ship your drives, your disk drives, to Microsoft, and a member of the team will then import that data. Of course, that does carry a fee. Okay. The other thing that's here as well is mailbox archiving, mailbox archive. So it's really kind of nice to see everything, I suppose, in one single place. So what I want to do today is we're talking about retention. All right. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go into and create a new retention policy. Now, as I just said, I'm in Trondheim today. So I want to go in and create a new Trondheim retention policy. So I'm going to call it RT policy. All right. Again, I can put in a little description about it here, and I'm going to click on next. Now, one of the first things it says is, do you want to create an adaptive scope? Now, you need to create these adaptive scopes in advance. I'll come back to that then, and I'll show you that. But for the moment, I'm just going to create a static scope. All right, so I'm going to click next, and this is where you can actually specify which account. So at the moment, it's everybody. So you can notice I'm doing everybody here that's being used by this particular retention policy. Now, again, one of the nice things about this is in the past, you would have had to do this in SharePoint. You would have had to do this in Exchange and so on. Here, you can go in and you can configure the whole thing in one go. Now, very important. So, what do you want to do? Do you want to retain the content, delete it, or both? So if you want to retain the items for a specific period, how long is that period going to be? And you've got a few options here. Now, just to make it simple, I'm just going to put 1 year in here. Okay. And you can put in customize the policy any way that you like. So do you want to start the retention period based when the item was created? So if today is the 1st of May 2022, then this document will be retained to the 1st of May 2023. Now, at the end of that 2023 period, it will then go into that 93-day recycle bin period that I just mentioned to you. All right. So when the item was created. Now, another option is when the item was last modified. Now, so if I put this in today and label this document today, so the 1st of May 2022, but I update the document on the 1st of September 2022, it's another year on from that, and then a further 93 days. You get the idea? Okay, so really important that you understand the difference between when it was created and when it was modified. All right, now, so it says retain the items for a specific period. Okay, now what do you want to do at the end of that retention period? Do you want to delete the items automatically? That will then go into the recycle bin system. Or do you want to do nothing? Okay, so what does that mean? Well, basically the idea is that if you try to delete the items within the year, it won't let you delete them because there is a policy on them. All right. However, if this is an option at the end of the year, the document is not deleted and it will just stay there. Okay, you can then delete it manually. All right, so again, choose what to do. Delete the items at the end of the year or do nothing. Okay. Or alternatively, do you want to place the items on hold? So essentially, you're archiving them forever here. And that means they will never be deleted. Okay. So again, that's a very powerful option. And in fact, you might want to create your own label for that or have your own policy for that. So again, there are some secrets, some features, some types of reports that you work with where you just may want to keep them forever. And then number 3 option here is only delete the items when they reach a certain age. Okay, so you could say 7 years. For tax records, for example, I need to keep these for 7 years. And again, this can be when it's created or when it was last modified. All right. So again, 3 options. Personally, I really like this option. All right, now that you've done that, I simply click on next and again submit that, and that retention policy is now created. So sticking with data lifecycle management, one thing that you'll also notice here is that you've, as well as got retention policies, you've also got labels and label policies. Now, retention policies are great if it's just a generic block of data or you just want to apply it to a whole resource. But labels and label policies can be a little bit more granular than that. So I'm going to pop in here to labels, and I'm going to create a new label. Now, just to mention, you've got two tools here which do similar things. So you've got data lifecycle management and you've also got records management as well. I'll show you the difference between them. So you've got label, create label here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and create this label, and I'm going to say for 1 year, and I'll call this 1 year tax retain. Okay, so 1 year tax retain. I'll just simply copy that across. So copy and just put in this in the description, and I'm going to click next. All right, again, almost identical. All right, so do you want to retain it for a specific period? Do you want to delete it automatically? Now, you'll notice that there are a few options that are different here. In this case, when you're creating a retention label, you've got a lot more granularity here. So at the end of the retention period where we just had delete items automatically, now we actually have an additional option which suggests that we can trigger what we call a disposition review. So that means that your team can review the data and say, you know, do we still need to keep those records on who really shot JFK or something like that? Or again, do you want to do nothing? The other thing that is different here is you can also retain the items forever. So labeled items will retain forever even if the user deletes them. Users will be able to edit items and change and remove the label. If they delete the items, we will keep copies in a secure location, and you can learn more about that. So in essence, this is not just placing the user's account on legal hold, but this is placing the item on legal hold. This rocks, by the way. Another option is only delete the items when it reaches a certain age, and this one, a label, which would say don't retain or delete items. And you think, well, what's the point of that? I honestly think this is where you would use it for personal data. So let's say you're working on a corporate laptop in a corporate environment, you're creating your own personal files. This is where you don't want to assign a retention label. All right. So again, in this place, I'm just going to go into here. I'm going to customize this again. And this time I'm going to say 1 year retention. And I'm just going to say again, this time I'll say trigger a disposition review, and you can choose who will receive the information. So I can choose reviewers here. So again, what I'll do is I can edit their name. So I'll just call, you can have like different stages of the review if you want to. So if you want to have like multiple stages, again, I won't bother with that. Oops, all right, maybe I will. So do you want to have like a staged review? So I'll say, yeah, stage 1 review. Okay, I'll click OK. And who is going to be the reviewer for this stage? So I've got a user called Mod, who's an administrator, and I'm going to have her as the main reviewer here. Of course, you can add in other stages as well if you want to. So up to 5 stages, that is called disposition. Very useful. All right, now that we're done, we can now create that label. Okay, so as I said, it differs from just a generic retention policy, because a generic retention policy, you apply it to an arbitrary block of data. whereas here we're creating is a little bit more finesse. We're creating individual labels. So what do we want to do? Do we want to publish this label to Microsoft 365 locations? Do you want to auto apply it based on a specific type of content, or do you want to do nothing? Well, you know what? I'm going to publish this label. And if the thing is, if you publish the label, it will create a new policy for you. So I'm going to say, yeah, I'm going to go ahead. I'm happy with that. And you can see it's created a policy and it's added one label. So I'm going to click next. And is this an adaptive? So do you want to do an adaptive rule or is it a static rule? Again, I'll just do a static rule for this demo. I'm going to do it for all locations, including Exchange, Microsoft 365 groups, or of course you can choose which ones you want them to go in yourself. I'm happy. I'm just going to accept it. Now we give the policy a name. So I'm going to call this my Norway policy. I'm going to call it my Norway RT policy, retention policy, and I'm going to click on next. All right, and we now click on submit. So I've gone ahead, I created a label, and I've published that label to a retention policy. And you can see here that the label has been created, and also if I go into label policies here is my Norway policy. Now, once you've created a policy, I'm going to go back in and edit this, and I'll click on next. So at the moment, you can see that this policy, I've only got one label. So I can easily go in here and I can say, hey, do I want to apply some additional label here as well? So I can actually add these labels to my policy. Click on next, and again, just republish that again. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you do retention labels and retention policies. So the final thing I just want to mention is just here in the data lifecycle management, and this is the archiving area. And in here, this is your mailbox archives. Now, in the past, you would have viewed these in Microsoft Exchange, but I like the way that Microsoft are kind of bringing everything into one place. All right. There is a little bleed over, however, between records management and lifecycle management. They both do similar features. So they, the file plans, you've got label policies here, just the same. And in fact, if you go into many of the label policies, you can see that the policy that I just created in data lifecycle management is now here in records management as well. So they're kind of similar. Now, the one thing, so other than the archiving, of course, the only other thing is legal hold or litigation hold. So for example, here, I'm going to come into, in fact, let me come down to Christie's account here. So if I go into Christie's account, and I'm going to come across to her mailbox here, and this is in Microsoft Exchange. And if I just scroll down, there's a couple of things that we've got. Well, first of all, there's a retention policy here, which comes from the old version of Exchange, which you can do. But you'll notice one thing here, there's no kind of litigation hold here. So you can't place the mailbox on litigation hold like you used to be able to. And in fact, for this, you need to come into the user portal in Microsoft 365. You need to come into the user portal here. And if I find Christie's account, if I go into Christie's account here, and in here you'll notice that we have a mail tab, and again this is all the mailbox features. And if you scroll down, one of the options here is litigation hold. Now when you place a user mailbox on litigation hold, everything still works, it all still functions, mail flows normally. The only difference is the user cannot empty the mailbox, or in fact their recycle bin is never emptied. So this is often used in legal cases, and it's also used just for operational reasons as well. A good tip, by the way, is let's say Christy left the company. What you could do is you could place her account on litigation hold, delete her user account, and her mailbox would still be here and it would say unlicensed. You could then add another user and assign this mailbox to that user. You could do that. All right. So that's quite useful. Now, on the subject of litigation hold, I'm going to do a full session on this in the future. I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to come into e-discovery. And for the moment, let me just talk very briefly about e-discovery. One of the things that you can do with e-discovery, I'm just going to click on, here's a case that I've created. And one of the first things you want to do is you want to place a user account on hold. Now, the difference here, as opposed to doing it in a litigation hold, is that in exchange, it's just the mailbox. Here, it's everything. All right. So I'm just going to call this hold 1. And if I click on next, I can then say, hey, you know, what do I want? Do I want to have OneDrive, Exchange public folders? So again, I could choose that same user again here. And again, I could place her account on hold. Okay, it's a similar way. The only difference here is that I can now do a further investigation of content. So I can actually go in and look at the content. I can see what she's doing. And again, if I need to export anything out and use it as evidence, I can do that. So that's the reason of the likes of legal hold. And again, I'm going to cover this in a future session. So there you have it. I hope you're a little bit wiser about retention, legal hold, and archiving. That's what happens with your data in Microsoft 365. Hey, listen, if you've enjoyed the session, hit that like button, give me a big thumbs up. It really does help my channel. And if you've not subscribed, of course, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell, and you won't miss out on the good stuff in the future. Now, if you've got any questions from this or any of my other sessions, then please go ahead, get them down below and I'll do my absolute best. Okay, so that's it for this week. Really appreciate you dropping by and I hope you've enjoyed it. And I'll see you next time. You stay safe. Take care. Hey, thanks so much for dropping by today. Here's a couple of videos that you may enjoy, and while you're here, go ahead, click on the subscribe button and you won't miss out.